Good morning, Bumblebees. Welcome to Thursday's English lesson this morning. We're going to continue with our adventure story, but before I show you today's slides, we're going to recap yesterday's slides. We're going to read my story together, and then we will move on to the middle of our adventure story. So if you cast your minds back to yesterday, we had a look at chapter 1 and chapter 2. We looked at all of the writing features down the side of our story. And hopefully you managed to get lots of those writing features in your chapters that you have written. So let's read and enjoy chapter 1 and chapter 2 before I reveal what happens next. So, chapter 1. Once there was a family of all sorts of animals that lived down at Mudpuddle Farm. Every morning, Frederick the flame-feathered cockerel wakes the animals by shouting, "Wakey, wakey!" Frederick called and called until all the animals were awake. All except one, Mossop. He was the laziest, sleepiest cat you have ever seen on a farm. One animal who hated Frederick was Peter. Peter was a rabbit who had only just moved onto the farm, and he's the cheekiest, most mischievous bunny you have ever met. Chapter 2. Later that day, whilst Mossop was snoring loudly, Peter snuck off and went to explore the farm. Before long, he was up to no good. He found the greenhouse where all the delicious crops were growing and started to munch and crunch on the carrots. Then Peter spotted the bright blue tractor where Mossop slept in the sunshine and gently turned the key. Suddenly, the tractor started to move and Mossop woke up with a fright. So there's our huge cliffhanger that makes us want to read on and find out what happens in chapter 3. So we're going to look at chapter 3 today, and your job today is to write the middle of your adventure story or the problem in your adventure story. So you're going to write the most exciting part of our story now after Mossop has started to drive the tractor. So let's read and enjoy first of all, and then we'll look at the writing features. So chapter 3, The Great Escape. A while later, when the tractor was still moving, Peter decided to cause some more chaos. Just then, Peter jumped off the tractor and hopped inside the tumble-down barn shed. Inside the barn, Peter chased and frightened all the animals. Then he pulled the hay and tossed it all over the floor. All of a sudden, the tiny mice escaped and ran all over the yard, and Farmer Rafferty was furious. Right, so, goodness gracious me, Peter Rabbit is causing all sorts of chaos on our farm this morning. So he has driven the tractor, he's caused some chaos, he's gone into the tumble-down barn shed, he's chased and frightened all the animals that were inside there. He's pulled the hay and thrown it all over the floor. And that's caused all the tiny mice to escape. All those mice that were hiding because Mossop didn't want to get taken off the farm are now running all over the yard. And Farmer Rafferty has seen what has happened. So you need to come up with a problem for your story. So this is my problem, in that Peter is causing so much chaos that Farmer Rafferty and Mossop have got to sort out the problem now. So let's have a look. We'll start with punctuation this time. So look at the punctuation that we have chosen to use in our story today. So we have got, I apologise, we have got an exclamation mark at the end of the sentence here. So Peter decided to cause some more chaos, and there is an exclamation mark there. Okay, the rest of the punctuation on this chapter particularly is just full stops. So make sure your full stops end up in the right place. So I've also used quite a lot of the story. So here I've used the tumble-down barn shed, I've used all the different frightened animals, I've used the tiny mice that were hiding. So I've used that story really carefully to be able to write it in my adventure story. Contracted form is there just to remind you that we can use contracted form, so we can use our apostrophes in our writing. We've used lots of suffixes here. If you glance down my piece of paper, you can see all the orange highlights underneath, and they are suffixes. So we've used those in our story to help us. Again, there's quite a mixture. We've got ing, ed in there, so just on IOUS. So just have a think of the different suffixes you can use. And again, the sentence openers are exactly the same as they were yesterday. They're all highlighted in green. So we've got a while later, just then, inside, and all of a sudden. So just try and think of a range of sentence openers when you are writing your stories. So when writing your stories, don't forget your key list. Think carefully about your sentence openers. Think about the different openers that we can include when we are writing our stories. Use those precise nouns, so people, the names of people, places and objects, the verbs which are doing words, and the adjectives which are describing words. This part here, the precise nouns, verbs and adjectives, quite key in the problem of the story, because you need to think about the verbs and what Peter is doing and getting up to. Use clear detail and information to explain what's going on in the story, to make it really obvious to your readers, and add detail about the characters and their actions. What are the characters doing? So have a bit of fun with your story. Think carefully about your chapter. Think carefully about all the details that you're going to use, and just focus on this one chapter today. So just focus on this chapter to be able to write the middle part of your story before we write the ending tomorrow. Have fun and send me through your writing.